Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to this part 2 of my how to draw almost anything in Illustrator. I think it would be, there are things out that say how to draw anything in Adobe Illustrator. I don't think they're kind of accurate. There are some things that are actually probably beyond the limitations of Illustrator, at least for most users. So that's why it's almost anything. I just like, I'm that kind of guy. I like to be accurate-ish with what I'm saying. Hey, Oliver, how you doing? Nice to see you there in the chat. Thank you very much for coming along and supporting. Really good. So last episode, which was on Wednesday this week, you can still catch that on demand if you want to. We were getting through some of the basics of working with Illustrator, right? So we were using basic shapes, all really, really basic stuff, but hopefully for you, done in the right way. If you've never seen me before, I am Tony Harmer, the Design Ninja. I am an ex-Adobe person, and my trainings, which are available on LinkedIn Learning, say that I am sorry I still have a really persistent and horrible cold. So if I sound a bit bleh, yeah, apologies. Can't do a lot about it, apart from take more and more Lemsip and other things. But anyway, right, let's crack on then with recapping on where we were last week. And this is where we were at. Okay, we were drawing this airship. That was the last thing I was working through here. Okay, I was going ahead and drawing all of the little component parts of that like so, just for the purposes of demonstration to see how you'd approach drawing such a thing. We also, prior to that, played with some basic shapes, okay, and drew this amusing robot face. Again, oh, my sound went off when I started the video. That's not good. Thank you very much for letting me know, Oliver. Cheers. I can deal with that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Handy to know. Should be there. Don't know quite what's gone wrong. Anyway, we did this as well, right? We went ahead and we drew this robot shape just there. Okay, making things of the basic shapes, and again choosing that approach. Kind of appropriate, really, because March of Robots is the thing that's currently on, the current drawing challenge that's currently on, and one of mine here, this is Signal, okay, is what we're going to be looking at today, amongst a couple of other things, but that's what we're going to be drawing today, so you can see the approaches for that, okay, so how that actually worked out. Right, so now that we know what we're doing, I guess there's nothing better to do really than to actually go ahead and start drawing. So I've dropped it into, or a copy of it, into another file here. It's then been changed into an image and it's dropped down onto a template layer like so. So that's how that works. Okay, so and now I'm going to start drawing. And if you don't know how to create the template layer, all right, then go ahead and check out the previous episode here. All right, so I'm just going to move myself over onto the right hand side here, just out of the way, just for the moment, so we can start looking at how we do this. Now I think I'll draw it over the top of the reference, so I'm going to zoom in here. I'm using a trackpad so I can kind of swipe outwards and swipe inwards to zoom in and out, although we did cover off some zooming methods last time. So I think I'm going to start off by working with the simple stuff first of all. So I'm going to work with the head shape just here. So for that, I'm going to use the pen tool. That's the classic pen tool is the thing that I'm going to be working with. And then simply going to move around and click at a few points here. Okay, like so. Now it's quite possible my smart guides might be reacting to the content that's underneath, but I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so that's the front of the face just here. I'm starting well away from this because otherwise here's what will happen. If I decided to go for this corner and clicked, right, it would take away that point, because if you look carefully at the cursor with the pen tool, it tells you what it's going to do. All right, so I'll make my way across to this side here, and once it's active on another path, okay, it won't interfere with other paths that are there. So I can go ahead now and line this up. So again, using my smart guides here, okay, to tell me, okay, what's going on underneath. So just, there we are. If I go up to that point there, across to this point here, across to this point here, and this point here. Alrighty. So I've got the basic shapes there that I need, but of course they are not coloured up the way that I need. Now this base colour that I have here is actually from the artwork underneath, so I know it's exactly what I want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select any one of these shapes just here, and I'm going to use this, the colour guide panel, which is going to help me out with picking other colours. So I'm going to click on this swatch at the top here to set this base colour. Okay, now at the moment the colour harmonic rule that I'm using here is monochromatic 2. You see, if I click on that, it changes like so. Actually, I was using monochromatic, so I'll just go and choose that so you can see the difference between the two. And actually, it's the top line that I'm after here, so that will work nicely for me, I think. Let's just have a quick double check. I'm kind of swaying towards monochromatic 2. And what I can do, if I just deselect the artwork now, is I can actually click on different swatches here. I can use the Command key or Control on Windows if I want to select things that aren't neighbouring each other, and the Shift key, of course, to select those that are. So I think I'm going to use these 5 from the top just here. I might also grab some of these 3 from the bottom. I'm not sure if I'll need them just yet, and I'll grab that grey there because I think I'll have that as well. And then I'm going to use this icon just here in the panel options, okay, to save that as a colour group to the swatches panel. So if we go and have a look at the swatches panel now, you'll see that I have, in addition to the swatches that you get when you open a document, so it might be a good idea for me to move her over onto the left hand side for this. Okay, in addition to the swatches that I have ordinarily, I've now got this. This is a colour group. This little folder indicates that there's a colour group there. Okay, and these are the colours that I picked from the colour guide panel. It's a very useful thing to work with. Now what I can do here is I can go ahead and actually drag these swatches onto the artwork. That's just one of the ways you can go and colour up artwork like so. You can see how quickly that is to do. But there is something else, of course, always that I could do here as well. And last time I did mention a thing called live paint. So I'm just going to undo the addition of those 2 swatches. Okay, and then I'm going to select all of that artwork that I've drawn just there, those 3 shapes, and I'm going to turn it into a live paint group. Okay, so object and live paint and make, and you can see that has a shortcut as well, which I know as it happens, but I'm trying to avoid that if you're a new user, right? Just get used to the menu system to start off with, so you know things are where they are. Okay, so now that you'll see I have these different icons, okay, down around the sides of that object. And that tells me visually it's a live paint group. Additionally, when you select things in Illustrator, there are at least 2 places you can see what the things are that you have selected. You can see at the top here in the control strip, okay, it says live paint just there, and over here in the properties panel, it says live paint there as well. And potentially it could also say that down at the bottom just here, because I can get it to tell me different things here as well. So there's a few different places. Actually, I might not be able to get that just there, but anyway, you can see there's other places to see information. And there'll be different panels too. So what is a live paint group, and why should you worry about using one, or not worry about using one? Why should you use one to help you draw? Here's what I'm going to show you. Okay, so I am going to use the live paint bucket here. So K is the key for the live paint bucket, but this is where it lives, okay, inside of the toolbox in this 2-up array. And I'm going to choose, okay, a colour just here. So if I go to my swatches panel, look at the colours we have here at the moment, and look at this little thing just above the tools icon. I can use my arrow key to cycle through those things. Left and right arrows will take me backwards and forwards in those groups. Okay, and up and down will take me into new groups and so on. So I want the lighter colour here for the side, so I can click and paint that. Okay, then I want a darker colour for the underneath. Now you might at this moment be thinking, but surely that's a waste of time, right? That you've done that and you could have coloured them up anyway. Well, here's the thing. If I needed those things to maintain their relationship, it's probably better if I do this in a separate couple of shapes here, then there are things I can do that I can't do with normal objects that I'd have to redraw. Plus, the point is here, I want to show you how live paint groups work. So I'm just going to draw, okay, 2 circles just for the moment. And for the moment, okay, I'm just going to give them the default appearance by tapping D on my keyboard. And usually that means a white fill and a black stroke. Okay, and then I'm going to change the fill to none. Okay, and then go to this object here, hold down the Alt or Option key and drag across like so. Once I've got those 2 things, I'm going to select them. Okay, go for my paint bucket tool, and then I'm just going to colour these up like so. So I'll do this side here in that colour, and I'll choose a different colour for this side, and I think I'll go for something like that in the middle. I'm now also going to get rid of all of those strokes now that you can see, okay, that the things are filled in and that they are indeed, okay, a live paint group. In fact, I'll just get rid of them another way just for the time being. So let's imagine that this was part of a logo for a client, okay, and they said, right, so this is about our relation, the 2 areas of business that we're in, and here's the relationship part of that. That's what we're trying to get across here. And so you take this back to the client, okay, and the client says, yeah, that's not quite as intense as we'd kind of hoped for. Can you just make the middle bit larger? Now, if you were drawing this with regular shapes, you'd have to go ahead, okay, and redraw all of those elements. However, okay, with a live paint group, you don't have to do that. Watch this, okay? I'm going to use my direct selection tool here. So I'm going to tap A on my keyboard to get that, and I'm going to click. Remember, this is the one that is most often used to select points, but it can also be used to select some things in groups. And actually, there's another tool that's perfect for things in groups, but this one will do just for this. I'm going to use my keyboard here to nudge this across. So I'm just using the left arrow key on my keyboard. And can you see what's happening? Okay, it's actually changing, and it's just like liquid colouring in. Yeah, because as long as those 3 sectors there still exist, okay, if I move this anywhere else, right, you can see that it's going to preserve those things. Yeah. I can make that as tenuous as I want or as intense as I like. Doesn't matter, right? Those areas will be preserved. However, if you separate them, that particular magic is over, because Illustrator doesn't know how to deal with those things. But fortunately, there's undo, okay, for us to work with just there. Yes, thank you, Norbert, for joining, and yeah, it's definitely worth a go. Okay, so there we are. That's why we're using a live paint group, or why we might use, okay, a live paint group, because it preserves those relationships. Okay, good. So that's working so far. We've got a similar shape down here, so we can very quickly draw that. Okay, so this is the body of this robot. So I'm going to move around, just drawing this quickly like so. It's taken on the colours of the last object that I drew, which is just fine. Okay, so I'm just going to make my way there and along here, down to this point here. Then just going to undo that because I didn't quite connect with that point. What I need to watch out for, and if I just switch myself over onto the right-hand side here, what I need to watch out for is that cursor, okay, showing me that small circle, okay, just to the bottom right of it. That tells me it's going to close the path just there. Okay, so I'm going to do that, then start drawing the next path just here, connecting with all of the other path points, okay, and then colouring those up. Now, I'm not going to turn this one into a live paint group because the other one was just for demonstration, because I did say I would cover that off. However, I am going to sample the colours from it. So I'm going to tap I to get my eyedropper. Okay, I can then click on the first colour I need. I'm going to hold down the Command key. That would be Control on Windows. That gives me temporary access to the selection tool. Okay, you can now see then that I've picked up this shape at the bottom there. Click on that. And I'll go for this one just here and sample that colour. Okay, so nice and easy does it. There we are. So there is our second shape. Now I think I'm going to group that together anyway, just turn it into a regular group. So I'm going to select all of those items, Object, Group, that would be Command G or Control G on Windows. And that's a fairly standard shortcut for a lot of things. They use that particular shortcut. Okay, good. That's working out pretty good so far. Now let's bring some eyes into this. Now I'm just going to drop across here and grab the eyes, or the eye group that I drew with the robot on Wednesday, okay, or in the last episode, given that it might not be Wednesday when you're watching this. And I'm going to drop those in like so. There we are. I'm going to double click on that, which takes me into isolation mode. So remember, that makes everything else that isn't in the group dim on the screen. And I'm just going to move this one in so they're a bit closer together. Okay, and I think I'm also going to recolor this one. Okay, so the gradient I have in there, I'm going to change that. And there's a few different ways I can do it, but the quickest way perhaps is for me to use this recolor artwork dialog. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this out over to the side here. Okay, and I'm going to drag this wheel around like so. Okay, to get to where I want to be. You can see how quickly it recolors that art for me. And I'm just changing that green color just there. Now, if I wanted to separate these things out, at the moment they're linked, I can do that. Okay, but that's for another day where you could separate all these things out. And there's so much more to this recolor. You'll notice there's nothing there that says OK to commit the action, right? It just does it. When you click away, okay, the dialog disappears and the action is done. So now I've got the eye group. I'm going to drag this onto the robot. Now I need to bring it to the front. So Command F or Control F to do that. Oh, sorry, that's paste in front. There you go, getting my shortcuts are all about myself. This one is Shift Command, okay, and then use the bracket key. So Shift Command here, right bracket, that's the square brackets, not the parentheses above the number to bring those forward. However, you can also right click and choose Arrange there to bring things forward and backwards. And those commands live normally in the object menu just there. Okay, so I'm going to bring those on like so. I'm actually going to use this small icon here in the properties panel to flip those horizontally, because I think I kind of like the green one on the left. I do, so I've made up my mind. I definitely do. Now I'm going to make these conform slightly better to the artwork underneath by distorting them. Now this is something you can do on a flexible basis, but I'm going to make this more permanent by using the free transform tool. So I'm going to tap E on my keyboard. That gets me the free transform tool. And this is another place where we see an additional piece of user interface. Okay, and it's in the form of that small HUD there of tools, because this tool has existed for quite a long time, but you used to be able to work with it in the way that I'm going to work with it. The only drawback was you had to hold down key combinations, okay, in order to do that. Very hard for some people, impossible for some others. Okay, very difficult to use that way. So this makes it much, much easier. So at the moment you can see that it's constraining. Okay, if I click that, it will constrain. I'm in free transform mode. I also have perspective distort mode and free distort, which is the one I am going to use. I can then work with the individual corners here, and you can see how it's distorting the artwork underneath. So I'm going to just bring this one in. Sorry, accidentally right clicking just there. There we are. That's starting to take on a real character of its own. There we go. Now, like I say, this is permanent. Once it's done, it's done, but it is a very, very quick way, okay, to generate that artwork. And I can still do other things like revolve it around like so. Okay, and there we are. We've got the eyes on. Now I can go ahead and work on any of these individually, so I'm just going to double click on this one, okay, and click on the eye here, because we've got a gradient there, a radial gradient. We did look at gradients in the previous episode, but this time I'm going to use something called the gradient annotator, which I think we did last time as well, okay, just to make a swift change to this. So I'm going to tap G on my keyboard. That gets me the gradient tool, okay. Now unlike Photoshop, right, the gradient tool doesn't apply gradients, it modifies existing gradients, okay. Yeah, and some shortcuts do require an extra hand. This is it. Now, if I zoom in, hopefully you can see there's a small dotted line around here showing me how the gradient is drawn. And I've got some widgets around the side here. This one allows me to make the gradient more or less elliptical. Like so. Now, as it happens, I would like that to be a little bit more elliptical. Okay, I'm going to make that slightly smaller, and then I'm just going to go over any part of that line and spin that around. Can you see that? Can you see how it's changing? Just to get it to the way I want it to conform there. And it makes all the difference, because just that slight separation between the two adds real dimension to that character. Now we need a facial expression on there, so that is simple enough. This is going to be a sort of a ooh expression there, like so. Okay, so simple drawing of a shape, that kind of gets that done very, very quickly. Okay, now I'm just looking at that because I'm still drawing that behind. Interesting. I'm going to show you what happened there. Right, it wasn't intentional, but I'm going to show you what happened. Let me just undo that. Illustrator has 3 drawing modes, and they can actually help you with drawing. There's Draw Normal, which is the one that everybody knows and loves from the first time they ever use Illustrator. There's Draw Behind, which is very, very useful in certain circumstances, and Draw Inside. Okay, now mine was in Draw Behind mode, and I can tell that because down here, this is where those 3 controls exist. Okay, there's Draw Normal. Now if I draw an ellipse, okay, like so, you can see that it draws in the right place. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of the stroke from that one, so I'm going to set that value to none. Okay, and then I think I'm going to choose a slightly different colour for that. There we are, like so. And as for why we would use the drawing modes at the moment, if we can get back to that as we go on, then I will. Okay, but for the minute, we won't worry too much about it, but it's very useful. Okay, the Draw Inside mode is a way to create something called a clipping group in Illustrator. Super, super handy. But I want to press on, okay, with these things. We've got quite a bit to do just here. Now, all the best robots need some antenna, right? Just do. You've got to have the antenna on the robots, I think. Okay, and this one is no exception. So how would I go about drawing that antenna? Well, if you remember when we were drawing the airship originally from the last episode, assuming you saw that, we just drew half of it and then we reflected that across. And this is another instance where I'm going to draw just half of it, okay? So let me just move myself back over onto the left-hand side here. All right, and we'll see how that goes. In fact, I'll zoom in so I'm in that sort of region for it. And then I'm going to draw the parts that I actually need. All right, so I am going to draw a couple of rectangles, like so. So I'll draw one wider one, like that. And then I'm just going to go above that, or just down to this point here, actually, and draw another one. If I wanted them to be exactly, actually, I'll do it a slightly different way, right? Because I'm going to say I want them to be purposely exactly the same height. So the way I could do that, if I switch to my selection tool, remember that's V is the accelerator to get that. Okay, and I'm still Norbert in the chat, I'm still looking for the draw better mode. Perfect. And Oliver's saying, yeah, aren't we all? Brilliant. Okay, so you can see that I held down the Alt or Option key. We did that before when we were drawing the primitive robot face, just there. Dragged up a copy, used my smart guides. So my smart guides told me when the 2 things, okay, were in alignment. Okay, and then that's good. Right, so now what I'm going to do okay, is I'm actually going to draw with some curves. So I'm going to select the top left corner point of the first rectangle. Okay, I'm going to try for the second one as well, and then just pull in those corner widgets like that. Now on the first one I'm going to have to stop at about that point. On the second one, if I just drag across, because I've got 2 points involved there now, okay, I can make that one more rounded like so. Slightly different. That's fine. So now I have those things. That's all good. I can change the colours in a moment. Then I'm going to draw another rectangle here. So this is the one for the antenna body itself. Now I'm drawing half of it, so I need to make sure that I don't draw it too wide. Okay. And that'll be fine as it is, I think. Maybe that's a shade too high. We will find out soon enough. I'm then going to select the top left point of that one and drag that across. Now I'm holding down Shift because I want it to keep alignment just here. Can you see that? By holding down Shift. Always remember when you're using what's called a modifier key, a key on your keyboard to modify, okay, that you've got to keep the key held down until you finish the operation. Otherwise, if I just release the Shift key there and stop, you can see it's not done what it needs to do. Okay, so holding down the Shift key, moving that inwards, there like so. Okay, that's just fine where it is. Releasing the trackpad that I happen to be using for that particular operation. Okay, and then releasing the Shift key. That's how it works. Let's colour some of these things up. Now, so this isn't exactly the right colour I want for here. I want something darker than the face of the robot. So I think I'm going to go for this one here. I'm just dragging the swatches on, okay, to those shapes. And this one needs to be kind of lighter here. There's a tip for you, right? If you want to remember what these things are attached to, if there's a particular significance, you can always double click on a swatch and rename it. By default, it has the color values as the name. Okay, I'm just going to call this one antenna, like so. Okay, now I've got a color swatch. If I hover over it, it actually tells me it's antenna. Yeah, so maybe I wanted to call this swatch here rubberized. Okay, because that's the rubberized sort of grommety parts of the robot. Oliver in the chat is saying, I need a mode where it creates stuff directly from how I imagine it looking in my head. Yeah, well, who knows? We may be on the edge of that. I'm also now deciding I want to make this slightly wider than it is at the moment, because I realise that the width of that in relation to this isn't going to work properly. Now I'm going to use or draw an ellipse. So what I'm going to do first of all is select one of these sort of rubberized parts just here. Using my smart guides, okay, so my smart guides telling me when I'm aligned with that right hand edge. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and Shift, okay, together. So I'm drawing a regular shape from the center outwards, okay, and then just draw a circle shape like so, okay. I now need, though, to get rid of half of that shape. Now, there are a lot of ways that I could do that, but for now, the simplest and most accurate way for me to do it is to draw another rectangle, like so, get my selection tool and Shift select the circle, and then use the pathfinder there to get rid of that half. Okay, there's several benefits, and Oliver again, sorry, no, it's Norbert asking, what is the benefit of naming swatches other than answering the question, what would Joe do? Oh dear. The naming things is a good idea, just period. It's a really good idea, okay, to name your swatches if you are working with anybody else. There's a whole different load of reasons. Here, it's helping me remember exactly which of those swatches I used, okay, for that color. You might also name them if you're involved in conventional printing, right? You might actually name them that way to specify particular kinds of ink. So that's why the feature exists. Okay, so I'm just going to resize this now. So I'm holding down Shift, keep it nice and regular. There we go, like that. Perfect. And I think at that relationship is pretty good. I'm going to select all of those things and I'm going to group them. Command G, Control G, or Object Group to do that. I'm then going to use an Illustrator effect, okay, to change the appearance of these. Now, if you're watching this and you're using an older version of Illustrator, you will still be able to do this, okay, but you will use what is known as Classic 3D in Illustrator. Okay, it doesn't work quite the same as this, but you will still be able to do the operation. It's just that when you get to the part where I'm moving things around, okay, hi evil, very clever. When you get to moving things around, you'll find that you have to do them in a dialogue. But here I'm just going to choose this command, okay, revolve. And that uses the artwork, okay, and revolves it around an axis like a lathe would do. A lathe spins things around, and then you kind of have at that with chisels and other tools to make things like spindles for a staircase or whatever. Now, at the moment, this is looking much more like a mug, and the reason for that is I need to just change which edge, okay, I'm working with. So the right hand edge, okay, resolves that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to pan across a bit and to collapse my swatches panel here just for the moment. Okay, and then I'm going to move this into position. So I'm going to drag it this way to start off with. Now, this is the thing that is in the new 3D in Illustrator, not in the Classic 3D. In Classic 3D, you'd have to do this inside of a dialogue, commit. Okay, if it wasn't right, you'd have to go back into the dialogue and so on. Okay, and happy Friday, Evil, by the way, just in case I didn't say that. This one, however, has a widget that I can work with. So what I can do is I can drag this like so, okay, to change the position and or the rotation. If I want to, I'm going to rotate that slightly. And each one of these is an axis of rotation. Now, this isn't the only time I'm going to be using this tool in this session, right? So you'll get to see more of that as we go on. Okay, but that's pretty good as it is. I do want to resize that slightly. Okay, it's just a bit on the big size there. And do you know what? I think I am going to roll that back the other way so it looks like it's a bit more speedy. Just there. And also in line with my original drawing. Now, this is in the wrong place, so I need to send this backwards in the stack. So Object, Arrange, Center Back will do just fine here for the moment. And then I can just go ahead and move that. And you can see how much effort that removes, okay, me being able to draw with those tools. And I can keep moving this around, okay, like so, until I get it pretty much the way I want it. And the other great thing is here is because this is an effect, the artwork inside of it can be edited. Now I'm going to double click on this, okay, which takes me into isolation mode. I'm then going to click to select the sort of ball shape at the top, and I want to make that smaller. Now, it's important that I don't change it, okay, on the left-hand edge, sorry, the right-hand edge there, because if I do, in fact, if I drag this across, you can see that it changes that dynamic completely. Now, that's a very, very interesting shape, but not what I want. So I'm just going to undo that. What I want to do here is just a tiny bit of scaling. So I'm just doing that from the top left there, holding down Shift to keep it proportional. And don't worry about the sort of jagginess that you're seeing while I'm doing that. That's just a very fast sort of screen render just updating, and you see it resolves itself as soon as it's done. I'll double click outside of that. I'm not done with it yet, however, because the lighting for it isn't exactly what I want. You can see on my robot that the light is clearly coming from the left-hand side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this lighting tab here in the 3D and materials panel, and then I'm going to just rotate the light around. Can you see that? So I'm just bringing that light around like so. Now imagine just having a look at this. Let me zoom in on this a bit more. Just having a look at this. Where do you think the light is coming from? Okay, just imagine that there was an actual physical light, okay, just here. Where do you think it's coming from? It's coming from below, right? you can see that because you've got these sort of film noir type shadows on top of the object. Yeah, so if you look at these rings just here, shadow along the top. If you look at the column here in the middle, you can see shadow, yeah, made by these objects, made by these two rings, these grommet type things. So that's something else we can change. We can change the height. It's actually more of an angle. Okay, like I say, that will have an effect on the other shapes there. Right, but I've just brought that in. I've increased the height, so now the highlights are appearing more towards the top of the objects, and that dramatic shadow has gone. And if I need to, I can rotate the lights around again to change the position until I get what I want. So just moving between those two things, okay, gets me to where I want to be. I can also soften the light out, which will soften the shadows as well. Pretty good, right? That it does that, and we can talk about it while we're going along, but we've still drawn that part, which you may have been thinking, how do I draw that? Okay, so let's have a look at the side antenna just here. How are we going to go about doing that? Well, believe it or not, I'm actually going to use a simple path to do that. If I tap P on my keyboard, I'm going to use the regular pen tool here again because I do want corners here and I don't want to be double clicking. Okay, I'm going to click here once. I'm going to come down to this point here. So what I'm visualizing is the middle of this shape. Okay, clicking around about there. Okay, and then just coming in this way like so to about that point there. Now it's drawn me a triangle. That's because it's drawing with a fill. Well, I can swap those over, okay, using this small icon here to swap the fill and stroke, or Shift X is a way you could do that. Excuse me 1 second. To get the shape I need. Then I'm going to work on the path itself. First of all, I'm going to hit Escape to stop me working with the pen tool or dropping any more points down. Then I'm going to activate stroke over here in the properties panel. Now I could also do that in the control strip as well sometimes, but not at the moment because I have an anchor point selected, and so Illustrator's thinking, all right, you need to focus on that. But here I can go ahead and override it. So I'm going to add round end caps to this, and then going to increase the weight of the stroke like so. I'm also going to round join the corners. Can you see the effect that that has? Okay, if I just change this, right, so I get this nice sort of elbow shape just there. Great stuff. Now that I've got that, I'm just going to make so it kind of matches underneath. I think I'm just going to select these 2 points here. So this one, and then just nudge those down using my keyboard. There we go. Something like that, I think, is just fine. By the way, Evil Cerise, I haven't managed to watch your Wednesday live stream yet, but I will. Yeah, because it was processing when I went to watch it on Wednesday. Right, so I've got that, and I'm then going to outline this path. Now, we did do that on the previous episode where we took a shape and we used this outline path command. So Object, Path, okay, outline stroke, and that changes that stroke into an actual shape. Okay, so there we are. We have our shape. I'm going to go ahead and choose my metalware color just here, so antenna. So I have that like so. In fact, I might use the next one to it. I might use that one for lighter there because it's more of a contrast. Then with this selected, I'm going to use another one of those 3D effects. So I'm going to go to the Effect menu, down to 3D and Materials. This time I'm going to choose this option, Inflate, just there. Look at that. Instantly it takes on, okay, properties that make it look like it's three-dimensional. Yeah. Now, would it stand up to being an actual 3D model? Then no, of course not. Right, so we need to make some changes here. But the things we can do is we can change the depth of this. If I drag this backwards to 0, okay, and then upwards, right, you can see it's getting marginally fatter. You'd see that slightly differently, okay, on different objects. And volume as well is kind of another one that you can do to change the amount of inflation. So you can see if I start to bring this up, yeah, there it looks like a button from the 1990s web, yeah, all the way up is where I want it to be. And again, with the lighting, I want to make some changes here. I want to rotate that around. So I'm getting that sort of edge there, and I'll make that softer as well. Okay, now I can change the intensity of the light too if I wanted to. Okay, you can see how that darkens down. And ambient light, the light that is generally all around us, we can change that too if we want to. We can change the intensity of that. We can make it super, super bright or very, very dark, which is effectively like turning it off. There we go. So let's see if we can get back to where we were with that. There we go, it's fine. And just mess with the intensity a little bit. I might make that a bit more intense. There we go. Something like that. Very, very easy. In terms of the kind of shape above it, I'm not going to go to the extent of doing this 3D spin thing for that. This one, I think, we could do perfectly well with a gradient. So I'm going to draw just a simple sphere or a simple circle for that. It's not really a sphere because it's got no dimension whatsoever beyond the flat. Where there's stuff going. I mean, I don't show the replay chat, so I've got to kind of remark on what's going on there in between. But hey ho. Right, so I'm going to use a gradient. Now, one of the quick ways I can do that, if you remember last time, if you watched last time, we used the Swatches panel to apply a gradient. Here's another way to apply a gradient. All you need to be aware of is which one of these two things here, the solid square representing the fill and the hollow square representing the strokes, which one of those is in front. That's called having focus, right? It means that you can apply different things. If I hit the period key on my keyboard, you can see straight away, okay, that I get a gradient. In fact, comma, period, slash on the UK keyboard or British keyboard or American keyboard for that matter will apply these things. So if I do comma, solid color, period, okay, gradient, slash, none. See that? Nice and easy. Okay, so it's a handy thing to know. And if you use Adobe InDesign, it does it there as well. So exactly the same deal. Right, so here is my gradient. Now, I would like to have more or less the same colors as the one at the top here. Fortunately, that's something I can go and pick. So I'm just going to double click, or click even, you can double click as well. I'm going to click on this stop from the gradient, okay, so you can see the effect that has. And then I'm going to click on the eyedropper underneath for the color picker. I can then go out, okay, and click on one of the colors I want. Now, if it's not picking it from that artwork, okay, it's because it's not really seeing the artwork, and that's because it has an effect applied to it, which is one of the limitations. But I'm going to do a cheat. I'm going to show you how to do a cheat. I'm going to option drag a copy of this artwork out, okay, and then I'm going to turn it into an image. Here's how I do that. Right, object, rasterize, and that turns this into an actual image file, right? So I want a transparent background on it. Everything else there is just fine, and the resolution that it's going to be rasterized at, okay, is great. Boom. Suddenly, now that's an image, right? So I can go ahead here and use the picker to choose those colors. See that? Changing straight away. I'm going to go to the stop at the end, and I'm going to choose that color just there. Okay, and I think I need to add maybe one more stop towards that end, and I'm going to pick this color just here. That's looking pretty good, I think. Right, I'll get my selection tool now and select this image and delete it. I no longer need it. And then I'm just going to work on emulating that shape above. So I'm going to tap G for my gradient tool. I'm going to use this widget part on the left hand side here, okay, to make the gradient larger. Whoops-a-daisy. Okay, and then I'm going to move that out like so. There we go. That's pretty much doing the job for me that I need without actually creating a whole different kind of object there to work with. Okay, so all I need to do now is to bring this bar here to the front. Okay, so I'm going to choose Arrange, Bring to Front. And there we are. We have that antenna part there, that sort of side antenna. And another benefit of working this way with the gradient is, because you would see part of that one on the other side, is I can simply option drag that across, okay, and then send that to the back. And we've drawn that part already. There we go. Super good. Right. Okay, so let's have a look now at how we might draw the neck, right? That connects, of course, the head to the body, as you do. Okay, and there's a couple of different ways we could do that. I'm going to choose to use something called a blend to do it. All right, so keeping a rough idea of where those things are, I'm going to draw a simple shape. Now this one, the one underneath, was actually made using a revolve. Okay, so that was, the shapes were drawn and then revolved. But for you this time, I'm going to use a blend. Okay, so I'm going to draw a rectangle like so. Okay, I'm going to fill it with a solid colour, so I'm just hitting the comma key on my keyboard to do that. Okay, it will make you faster if you can latch onto those things. Okay, then I'm going to change the colours. So I'm going to go to my swatches panel just here. Okay, this is the one I'm using for my rubberized stuff, but I think I actually need something slightly different. Okay, for this one, so I'll start off with that one. Okay, then I'm going to get my selection tool, option drag a copy. Oh, first of all, I'm just going to round off all the corners there like that. Okay, bring that up away like so, and then I'm going to option drag a copy like this, and I'm going to choose a lighter colour just there. Now I'm going to move that down just a little bit like so. If I select both of these things together, okay, so I'll shift click one and the other, I'm just going to move them out a little way across like so. So you can see what I have there. I'm going to blend them. Now there's a shortcut for that, as there are for many things in Illustrator, but here I'm going to go to the Object menu, okay, and down to Blend and choose Make. And you can see how it blends those two things together. However, it's not exactly what I want. I'm going to add a stroke to both of those things here. Okay, so I kind of want that coiled or sort of articulated, like armoured cabling kind of look to it. So I'm going to choose a darker colour there for the swatch. Now, at the moment, that looks crazy, and it's got a great reason for looking crazy because of the blend, but I'm going to change it. If I come over to the Properties panel just here, you can see I have this thing for blend options, and if I click there, there are 3 different kinds of blends that I can make. Okay, so smooth colour, which is what's happening at the moment, specified steps, or specified distance, but I'm going to change this to specified steps. Now the smooth colour introduces as many objects in between as are necessary to achieve what it believes is a smooth colour, but it always goes crazy when it's doing things with strokes. So I'm going to change this to specified steps. That's how many we used, 59 objects. Let's just change that to 2. Okay, I'm going to hit the tab key just to move through that, and you can see now how that works, how that blend is occurring just there. Okay, and if I change the amount, I'm going to click in that field now and just use my up and down arrow keys. So 1 more, 2 more, and drop it down so there's 1 less, and so on. Okay, so I have those things. Blends are very, very useful. I appreciate, though, you might not be sold on them right at this particular moment. And Caroline's in the chat. Hey, Caroline. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so now I have these together. So I have that blend working. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, I could have done this with ellipses, which I'm going to do for the next blend that we're going to do in a second. But I could also try using another one of these effects, which are the things that you really need to get into to be able to draw like pretty much anything. Yeah, they'll be very, very handy, but we can only go through so many in this session. I'm going to try something here. I'm going to use one of these warp things. You do also have a distort and transform just there, which might help, but I'm going to use one of these warps. I'm going to choose this bulge warp just here. Okay, and then I'm going to just move this up. This is just one way you could do this. There are loads of different ways to achieve this. Now look at that. Okay, you can see that that already is starting to look a little bit more the way you might expect that neck to appear. So I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm going to bring this into place, okay, over here like so. All right, I might just change that stroke in a moment for something lighter, perhaps on there. might be a good idea. But for now, it's just fine as it is. I need to bring this group to the front because we need to hide some of this. Man, I find it really hard to keep using the menu thing because my muscle memory just wants to bam, 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 hit a keyboard, bam, 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 have it done. But that's not for everybody. It doesn't work out that well for everybody. Now, in case you're wondering why I chose to use that particular blend there rather than the Revolve, okay, and messing around with the shadows, is because, right, you can see that I've actually created my own undershading for that object. Right, you can see from that, hopefully, right, that it would be darker at the top than it is at the bottom. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to just go into this. I've double clicked to go into isolation mode. This is where I can select those two objects just there. And I think I'll get rid of the stroke. Let's see what these look like without that stroke. So let's just remove that. Yeah, and I think for now that's fine. That's more in keeping with the other one. So how about the arms? How do we give that sort of articulated feel to the arms? Because they kind of move somewhere different. This is another place, though, where I will use a blend. And actually, one of the things, just as a sideline, just for a moment, excuse me, where you might use the blend that we've just used, if you remember when we looked at the vintage airship towards the end of the stream, the previous stream, right, I said about using blends to draw something like this. Now let me give you just a very quick, we'll just drop into this file just for a moment. Okay, so I can give you a rough idea of how that might work. You can see that I've already drawn the main outlines for this. If I just turn that out, okay, I'll turn that off there. You can see what I've drawn. Excuse me 1 second. I think I am going to have to mute and just cough for a second. This time I will actually mute, because I can remember on a previous occasion not doing that. Okay, so let's have a look at how we might do this. So I'm just going to use the pen tool for this one because I do actually want these to be one continuous line here. Okay, like so. Okay, good. That's done. Now, I know I've overdrawn at the top here. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with overdrawing. You can clean up very, very quickly from that. But for now, that's what I want to do just there. Okay, I'm also, in fact, you know what? I could even use the same shape. I'm going to Option drag, okay, and Shift to keep it aligned. I'm going to Option drag this one over this way, like so, okay, and then I am just going to use my direct selection tool to grab hold of this point and bring that up like that, okay. Good. Now I need to make sure that I have the objects selected, not the anchor points. That's important, right? If you've got an individual anchor point, this will. So what I tend to do, just go crazy. What I tend to do is I go and I get the selection tool, the regular selection tool, select the first shape. Yeah, that way I haven't selected any individual anchor point. Hold down Shift, select the second shape, like so, and then make a new blend. Now there is actually a tool, by the way, for you to do that doesn't involve selection. Let me show you that. If you tap W on your keyboard, that will get you the blend tool, okay, and it is useful to know about that, so because it can do other things, and we'll actually use it in a second anyway. I can click on that first object, okay, and then click on the second object. It doesn't give you any clue that you've clicked on it, however, right? But then it creates the blend between the two things. Okay. Now, what I need to do here is I need to access the options. Now, previously, okay, I clicked on this icon or this button in the properties panel, but another way you can access those options is to go to the tool in the toolbox and double click on it. Okay. There are a few tools that have that behavior. Now, it's doing smooth color here. I'm going to change this to specified steps. And then I'm just going to start hitting the up arrow on my keyboard to increase the amount here. Okay, so you can see that as I do that, I'm assuming that these things are kind of evenly spaced. That is very, very close to actually being about right. Yeah, now it's moving away from being about right, I think, around about there. So they're maybe not completely evenly spaced, but at least they give me a starting point. And you'll also notice, if I hit OK for that, just turn off the background for a moment, you'll also notice that it has bent the shapes to conform between the two things. So if you get the beginning and the end right, you stand a really good chance, okay, of getting a successive blend. So that's one of the ways that could work. Now, when you've got it that way, to work with the individual path shapes, okay, what you can then do, okay, is expand that. And the way to do that is go Object, Blend, okay, and Expand. Release will just take the blend away, right? Expand makes those into actual shapes that you can work with. Okay, so that's how that works. It's a very useful thing to know. You can get away with an awful lot of drawing shortcuts by thinking, is that something I could blend? And you're going to get a bit more of that just about now with our robot friend just here. So I'm going to start off by drawing an ellipse and positioning it pretty much where I want it to be. In fact, there you go. It's a regular circle, so I've held down Shift to draw that. And I'm just going to put that into place and then colour this up. So for the fill, I'm going to use my antenna colour there, I think. Oh, actually, no, I'll go for the one lighter because this can be shiny metal. And then for the stroke, I am going to apply a stroke to this, and I think I'll go with one of these darker colours there. I went on a lighter one on the example that I drew beforehand. Okay, but that one's fine. I might make that a tad bigger. Okay, so I'm just holding down Shift, dragging on one of those corners to change that. Super good. And then I'm going to Option drag a copy to where I would like the final one to be, which is around about there. Okay, good. So we've got the parts we need there. I'm going to switch to my selection tool and Shift click the first shape that I drew there, okay, of the two ellipses. I'm then going to turn this into a blend. Now this time I'll use the menu system, Object, Blend, Make. And you can see it creates me that blend, which isn't what I want. Okay, so I'm going to increase the number of steps just there. So I'll just double click on the blend tool here. Change that to specified steps. At the moment it's 2 because that's what I did last time. And now start to increase that until it starts to look something like the way I want it to look. Okay, so that's kind of getting there. That stroke shape is too strong for what I really do want here, by the way, but it does make it a lot easier for you to see. Okay, so I'm going to stick with it just for the moment. Will it blend? Will it blend? Oh man, that used to be great. Will it blend? Fantastic. Now I've just thought, you know, something else I could do here if I wanted to, right, to save using tricks to light this. I know that the arm at the moment isn't in the shape it needs to be. We're going to get to that in a second. But I'm trying to impart here the editability of the thing, how super editable it is. I'm going to double click isolation mode, right? That allows me to access the shapes on both ends of the blend. So I can select both of them. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that there's a path in between those. We'll talk about that in just a second. But what I want to do first is change these to a gradient. Okay, now looking at the toolbox here, I can see that the stroke has focus. It's in front. So I'm going to tap X on my keyboard that swaps the focus around. Okay, then I'm going to hit the period key on my keyboard to apply this gradient. Now I do want a linear gradient just here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a couple of swatches for this. So that's the color I'm going to use, so the metalware. So I think I'm just going to go 2 steps down from there. Okay, I'm going to click this end and use the sort of metalware color that I want to use, something like that. Now the angle is wrong just for the moment, so I need to change that. I can do that in this field. I think an angle of 90 degrees, okay, wrong way, of minus 90 degrees. I think an angle of minus 90 degrees will work. Look at that. Can you see? Now I'm getting slightly this sort of undershaded effect, and I can actually pull back the color stop here and even the midpoint of the blend to change that. That's working pretty well. Okay, I'm going to change that stroke color because it's just way too dark. I can't bear it. There we are, something like that. Slightly better. Not brilliant, but slightly better. So what is the deal then with this path just here? Well, this is called the blend spine. Okay, so it's the thing that the blend runs along, but it is a path like any other path. Okay, so you can manipulate it. In fact, you can even replace it with a path you've drawn yourself. Okay, so you could go ahead and draw another path and then replace this spine with this one. I'll show you about that in just a second. But here I'm going to click on that blend spine to select it. And then I'm going to use a tool that you find with the pen tool. Okay, I just go to the pen tool and long press here. Okay, you can see this anchor point tool just there allows me to work with anchor points. In fact, there's a whole bunch of different things I could use here for this, but this one will do just fine. With the anchor point tool, I'm going to move towards the center of that path, and hopefully you can just about see that the icon for the tool has changed. Okay, this is going to convert that path type. If I click and drag like so, right, you can see that I can bend that into shape and that the blend is adjusting as I do it. So it's like almost hypnotic, right? Ooh, send me your bank details. That kind of thing. But a very quick way for me to draw that. Now, I didn't need to be in isolation mode to do that. I could do it anyway from out there, but isolation mode worked well, okay, for the other parts of it. So there we go. So now we've got that arm just there. Okay, that's groovy. And we did it with just a blend. We could always hold down the Option key, right? Drag that over here. I'm going to flip this one like so. Okay, then if I want to change the path, I'll send that to the back. I'm using the keyboard now to do that. I can go ahead and get the end of the path just there, bend that around into place. I'm going to use that handle to change the nature of the shape of the path. See that? See how it's changing? It's cool, right? That you can do that. You can do all of that good stuff from in there. All glory to the Hypno arm. Best, they picked the best references, Oliver, the best references. Hypno Toad. Right, so that's fine. However, do you know what? That's kind of going to give me a difficult wrist. Here's another thing I could do. I'm going to go to the Object Blend options here and choose Reverse Spine. Now that works perfectly well. Yeah. Another thing I could do, I'm just going to double click on there so I can access that object, is reduce the size of that end piece. And like so. And hopefully you're getting from this now just how easy, once you learn these things, you can break down shapes, okay, and think what is the best tool for that. Yeah, you'll be able to see this. Sometimes you'll come up with 3, 4, 5, however many solutions for it. Okay, but there are some things like this where this is the best way to do it, I think. Okay, so now we need to do sort of this wrist here and the arm. Well, the wrist is going to be really simple because I am simply going to draw another ellipse like so. I am going to choose an appropriate colour for it, that colour being the rubberized colour I had earlier. Then I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to use those 3D tools again. So Effect, 3D Materials. Okay, I'm going to choose Extrude and Bevel. Groovy, like so. And this is the extrusion that I get. Now, strangely enough, I was just going to say the panel hasn't opened, and it did. I'm going to change the depth. Now, looking at the panel just here, where it says 50 points, where the slider is, that looks like it's kind of at the bottom there, right? Well, it isn't. If you drag it to the left, you can still keep going. There's just a bit more to be had from there. Bonkers. Right, so now we've got that. I'm going to switch to my selection tool and then I can start to work on these axes. So I want to spin this first of all around the x-axis, like so, something like that. And then I'm going to spin it around the y-axis maybe, just into place there, and then perhaps even rotate around the sides here. There we go. And just by moving those things around, okay, eventually you'll learn where the best things are to get that into the shape that or into the place that you want it. But for now, I think that's pretty much exactly where I would like that to be just now. Now again, this would be something else I could copy over onto the other side of the artwork and do the hand, but as we've got about half an hour left, there's something else I want to do. So I'm going to draw the hand here. You could just copy those over, change their stacking order, yeah, and build your own thing. Oh, and I didn't change the lighting here either. I think I'm going to do that. When you've got an effect applied, by the way, and this is a thing worth noting, right? You don't go back to the menu to choose it, or otherwise it will add an instance on top of that. You go over to the properties panel here, or the appearance panel, where you'll find it for any selected object, what makes its appearance look the way it is. And then you click on the effect, and that takes you back into the effect that you have already. Okay, then you can go in and change this around. So for example, if I wanted to bring the height up a bit again and change the rotation of the lighting, you can see how I could do that nice and easily, like so. Yeah, so there you go. That's that height versus rotation thing again. There we are. See? Simples, as they say. Good. Right. So that was that point noted. Now we need to draw this shape at the top here, the claw shape. For this, I'm going to do something very, very straightforward for that. So, and again, this is going to be a fairly simple extrusion. Getting an idea of where I want it to be. Let's change the fill color of that. Okay, like so. And I don't want a stroke on there, so I'm going to get rid of that. So now I've got this shape here. I am going to use the Option key to drag a copy downwards, like so. That is just fine where it is there. I want the two things to connect. I'll change the depth of this one a little bit. Then I'm going to shear this across. So this is another one of the transformation tools I mentioned last time. Let's see the see the automatic subtitles get hold of that one. Let's do another one. I'm going to make another one of those. So I'm going to choose the shear tool, and I am going to click on that top left hand point just there, okay, to set the transformation point. I'm then going to drag across like so, and if I hold down shift, okay, it keeps that regular like that. There we are. Good. So I've got those two things. I don't think they did quite connect, you know. There we are. They are now. Something like that. Okay, and I might even modify that still further. So I'm going to get the direct selection tool. I'm going to make it a bit more interesting to look at. There we are. Just bringing that point down there. Okay, and I think also I might draw one more rectangle here along the bottom, just trying to give it a bit more of an interesting shape. And so I'm just messing around, starting off with a primitive shape and then bending the paths around like so. And I think also on this one, try an ellipse just there. There we are, great stuff. That sort of works. I might select these 2 points here. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but they are not quite connected. So what I'm going to do is, with the direct selection tool, is go over both of those, and I want to make sure they're in exactly the same place. And to do that, use a command called the average command. Okay, so that's object path average just there. And I'm going to say do this to both of their locations. And now they are joined up like so. Great stuff. Okay, that sort of works. And with a bit more modelling around, yeah, I'd get that to work perfectly well. So I'm just going to get that bottom point just there. Just going for a stronger shape. That works pretty good. Okay, now I've got that, I'm going to select the rectangle parts of that and join them together using my Pathfinder. We did that last time. Then I'm going to reflect them across. So the reflect tool is O. If you remember, I said about lines going through that. I'm going to use this anchor point just here as the reference. And I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key, click that. This time I want to reflect vertically and create a copy. If you remember, I could click copy, or I could hold down Option on a Mac, Control on a PC, Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and hit return. Boof, there's my copy, like so. That works pretty well. I might just make that small shape there a bit larger there. That's much more interesting. And then I'm going to join those three things together just because I want to, like that. And then we'll go ahead and draw that hand by using the extrude there. I think that's going to be too big, right, but we'll try at that. So effect, 3D and materials, extrude and bevel. And there's my extrusion working for me. Now I want to change that depth. I'm going to click in the field here and just use my down arrow, because it saves me a whole load of kind of messing around dragging a slider. And then I'm going to turn on this bevel option just here. Now you can see what it's done just there. Interesting, yeah, but not what I want. Generally with something like this, and we can choose different profiles just here, right? Classic is fine. I think for this a bevel of about sort of 10% or maybe even lower will work pretty well. That's good. 10% just there, fine. Again, this would be a place where I really would change the lighting so that it kind of matched the other areas, okay, in the object, and then just spin this around into place by just modeling these things. Talking of modeling with this, here's an interesting thing for you. Anything that you've created using the most recent 3D options inside of Illustrator can actually be exported as an OBJ straight up. In fact, I'm going to use something else. Now this is a slight diversion from the topic, but if I go here to this panel, this is called the asset export panel. We'll export different assets for you. You can see that OBJ is in there. Now that only appears if you've got an object that has a 3D effect on it. You can actually export it as an OBJ, which may or may not be useful. Something you've modeled in Illustrator that is actually 3D, real 3D. Crazy. Right, so how do we go about drawing this array at the bottom? Right, well, again, that's going to be another inflation. Yeah, so what I'm going to do there is I'm going to draw the parts of this. I'm going to draw this fairly quickly if I can. Okay, so let's just do that. I am going to round those ends off there like so. Okay, I'm going to drag another one across there like that. Okay, and then I'm going to draw these slightly differently this time. I'm going to have that little bump on the top. Kind of like it. That's good. And we'll go with one more rectangle here. I think this one should be slightly more solid than the other two. Let's bring that in. There we go. Just to make sure these are all centered, I'm going to select these objects just here. Now, rather than just joining them together using the Pathfinder, what I am going to do this time is I'm going to create something called a compound shape. I'm going to use the Option key, okay, Alt key on Windows. So the visual effect is that they are one shape, right? Whereas the actual things are still there. All of the individual elements are still there. Anyway, I'm going to select those and use my alignment tools to make sure they're aligned. And I'm actually going to do that again. I'm going to Option click that, okay, to join those things together. So now it's one thing. If I applied a stroke to it very quickly, you would see that the stroke applied around the outsides there. Okay, like so. So it really does treat them as one thing. Okay, now I've done that, I'm going to use the inflate again from the 3D and materials. It's very heavy on the 3D and materials, this particular session. Let's move that across so it's easier for you to see. That inflation is just fine. I am just going to play with the lighting a little bit just to bring that around to something like that. That's really good. Okay, just there. That's fine for the moment. The only other thing I might do if I bring this into place around about here, because I would make another extrusion similar to the wrist to join those two things together, is I might actually add a little bit of a curve, okay, to this top shape. So if I go for the Convert Anchor Point tool again, I can go and grab that section there and then just pull that top part up like so, and hey ho, there's that curve. Also, the forks themselves, because that's what they're called, okay, aren't quite long enough. So I can go ahead and get my selection tool, direct selection tool, select just the bottom anchor points, okay, and using my down arrow keys are good. You don't accidentally go from side to side. Just there, talking of modeling Tony's side gigs. Brilliant. okay, to draw that fork. The next bit, okay, is something we've done already with a revolve, but with a twist. Okay, so I'm going to draw here for this wheel. I've not done any center workings for the wheel. Yeah, we're not making an engineering drawing here. This is a complete fantasy thing. So I'm just going to draw a single shape like so, something like that. Let's get this into one of those darker colors that I liked earlier. I think that one's still a bit too dark. Do you know what? I'm going to go with the grays. I'm going to go with something like that is a good grey for this. Okay, so I'm going to use once more, right, the effect 3D materials. This time I'm going to use revolve, like so. You can see it's creating me a donut kind of thing just there. Right, doesn't matter which edge, but I can put in an offset just here. Now I'm going to do this carefully. So whenever I want to do things carefully, I click in the field, okay, and then use my arrow keys up to increase, okay, down to decrease the shape just there. I think that's working pretty good. Okay, like it. Then we need to rotate that around. It's important that you rotate here. Rotating the artwork will create you a completely, or could create you a completely different result. And in fact, if you look now, you can see there's a weird twist going on there. I'll just undo that. Okay, you can still move this around, however, so I can move it into place like so. Okay, and then get that the way I want it to be. So let's increase the diameter there and then bring that down just a bit. That's working pretty good. Okay, this is where this is going to get really fun because, of course, that shape is on top of the forks. So the illusion is not yet there. So I'm going to bring the forks forward. So I'm going to right click on there, choose arrange, bring to front. That will do. So they're in the right place. Okay. I think I might want to separate the forks out a little bit. So here is how I'm going to do that. I am going to get my direct selection tool, click on the left hand shape, and I'm going to use my arrow keys here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click on the right hand shape and go in the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to widen those out like so. Also, I need to add a bit more rotation onto those. If I get my selection tool here, select the whole thing, I can pivot this around a little bit. So I'm rotating there along the y-axis. You can see I even get the numbers for that, but we're still not quite ready. Yeah, that's fine. Now we need to deal with this wheel. It's in the right place. It looks pretty good. Yeah, that's working for me, I think. But we've got this fork in the way. So how are we going to deal with it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create a mask to do this. Okay, let me just have a quick 50 points. Where's this? The Eurovision? Oh, wait, that would be 2 points. It would if it was the UK. Nil point, I think, is the phrase attached to UK entries to Eurovision. Right, so we're going to use a mask to do this. Now, there are so many different ways I could achieve what I want to do here, but I'm going to do this just using the pen tool. So I'm going to select the forks because it's this fork that needs masking out. Okay, I'm then going to go to the transparency panel. Okay, just here. If you can't find it there, go to the window menu. That's where all of the panels live. Okay, almost all of the panels live. I'm going to choose this option, make mask. Now, to start off with, that object is going to disappear. Yeah. Now, I can turn off this clip option. Yeah, and now it's just waiting for me to draw in this mask. Now, if you've used masking in Photoshop, it's kind of similar. Black conceals, white reveals, unless you check this invert mask option just here. Right, so white is revealing everything. I need to draw something in black, okay, to conceal the things I don't want. And more importantly, I need to click on the mask, okay. Have a look at that panel. You'll see there is a blue highlight around the edge of that panel. If I click back for the artwork, which is important when you want to move on from here, right, it changes the appearance of that. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my friend the curvature pen tool, okay, up here in the toolbox. In fact, let me just make the pen visible so you can see it. There it is, just to the right hand side of that. I am going to choose black, okay, as the color that I work with, and no stroke. Right, let's zoom in just a touch here, okay, so we can get betwixt or between the two. Okay, and I need to draw the right hand edge of the wheel, more or less. So I'm going to click once, here twice, 3 times. I'm going to go 4 times just down there. This is all something I can change. I'm then going to double click, which creates me a straight point. Okay, I just think this is for tidiness. I'm going to double click again, another straight point. I'm going to go to the top and double click again, another straight point just there. Now already you can see that fork is disappearing, but now I'm just going to bend around, okay, by moving points around the shapes here. If I go far away, you can see that I'm leaving the edge of the artwork, and sometimes you might actually want to do that. If you need to add a point, simply click on the path. If you need to delete one, click on the point and then just hit delete on your keyboard. This is a very, very easy tool to work with, unlike the original pen tool. Now, I happen to think that is doing its job pretty nicely, and certainly for the purposes of this, right, that is doing a very good job just there. Just going to get my selection tool and click away from it. There is a slight gap just there that I would need to deal with if this was actual production artwork. In fact, I'm just going to go back to that tool and just move it around just a little bit there. There we go. Let's pretend it is production artwork, like that. When I am happy with it, I know there's still a tiny, tiny gap. You must click back on the artwork in the transparency panel. Okay, you must do that. Okay, that's really good. Right, now that's done. So that's masked out that fork just there. Okay, and the other bits we could just move around. The only other thing I think we're missing from this robot is the hazard marker on its chest. Let's just have a quick look. Yep, we need to make a hazard marker just there. Okay, so let's do that. Let's use another shape here. So I'm going to use this polygon tool. Click and draw with the polygon tool. Now, by default, I'm just using my keyboard here just for a second. By default, when you use this tool, you will draw a hexagon. Now, until you release the mouse button, right, you can change the number of sides, yeah, using the arrow keys on your keyboard. However, that's not for everyone. You don't need to worry too much about that, because you can stop at any point, okay, and if it's not the shape you want, you can now, or have been able to for a number of years, in earlier versions of Illustrator can't do this, but you can, okay, change the number of sides here after you've drawn. You see this small widget on the right hand side? It may be on the top or wherever, depending on the angle you drew your shape, but you'll see this diamond. And when you hover over it, you get a plus or minus there. And if I drag that downwards here, you can see I'm in close, so it's actually going up on mine. Right, but up or down, you can change the number of sides. Easy. Right, now I've got a triangle that I want. I'm going to go to the widget at the top here. There's only one widget on a triangle for the whole shape. Okay, you can actually work with corners individually, and I'm going to click and drag to round those off, like so. That's pretty good. Right, so now that I've got that shape, I need to fill that with a color. So I'm going to fill this one with white, like so. Let's move it so it's over the top of the shape so you can see it just there. So I've done that. I'm then going to use another effect, because effects are a great way, okay, to draw a lot of things, but they do require you knowing a bit more about the tools. And don't forget, you can always go and check out my courses on LinkedIn Learning, which are available off the shelf as well as in subscription. If you're a subscriber to LinkedIn Premium, they're free for you anyway. But if you're not and you don't want a subscription, you can go there. Many of them are available off the shelf. Okay, so here's what I've got. I've got this shape. I'm going to use an effect. And the effect I'm going to do is by creating another fill for this shape. So just down here in the appearance panel, I can click to add a new fill. So now this shape has 2 fills. I'm going to make this one yellow. Okay, like so. And this is just like the layers panel. Can you see how when you highlight these things, they're kind of selected? Well, that's because they actually are. I'm going to go to the Effects tab down here and choose Path, Offset Path, and I'm going to enter a negative value for that. See that? Okay, it's creating me a path that is offset from that first one. So it's nice and easy for me to draw that shape together. I'm then going to draw the hazard marker itself, which we're going to use 2 ellipses to do that. So I'm going to draw my first ellipse like so. Okay, down here. And, pardon me, fill that with a colour like this. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key. Excuse me 1 second. I'm just going to need to mute because I need a cough. This cold is doing me in. There we go, and I'm back. So now we've got this ellipse. Notice that the smart guides there, when you're moving things around, are helping you all the time with where things are in relation to each other. Yeah. But if you're at any point unsure, you can always go to the selection tool, select the first shape, shift click the other shape, okay, and then choose your alignment option there like so. Okay, good. So now I have that, I am going to use the Alt or Option key to drag another version of that up to the top. For some reason that does not look centered there. Maybe I had something else active. There you go, that's more or less right. Good. I'm then going to select the topmost of those ellipses, tap the A key on my keyboard, get hold of the bottom anchor point, and then holding Shift, I'm going to drag downwards to keep it in proportion with that. So if I start dragging and then hold down Shift, there like so. Okay, that's not quite round enough for me at the bottom. So with that point still active, I'm going to tap S on the keyboard. Okay, and then I can drag outwards, and it's actually scaling the handles of the point. Now I've got those things together. Okay, I'm going to select all 3 of those and group them. I can then try for my transformation tool here. So I'm going to tap E on my keyboard, which gets me to that very quickly. I'm going to go to Distort. Now let's just see if we're all good for that. It looks like we are. And just drag this into place. There we go. And that's pretty much how I drew my original signal robot, which I will show you just here. There's the signal robot, and that's how that went. Okay, drawing it using all of the commands that you've seen just there. Okay, all of the things we've done today, just a little bit extra. I pulled these across to the other side for the other hands and so on. But that is it. I hope you've enjoyed that. Let's have a quick scan in the chat. Just there. Very good. Oliver watches way too much TV. Don't we all, I think? Talking of modelling, that's so funny, Timbot. Groovy. Right, so let me just move myself over onto the right-hand side so you can see the complete version of Signal just there. If you follow my Instagram, @TonyHarmer, you'll see that I'm drawing a robot a day with March of Robots. I've got to catch up this weekend because I only got the email yesterday. I thought, yeah, having to play catch-up to join in. But I am, so you can check out the robots that I draw over the next 31 days. Well, not the next 31 days, but the complete 31 days of March. But otherwise, we are all good. Next time, move side to side, please. Okay, Tim, I will. Thank you very much. And thanks, Oliver. Glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you find time to do more of my courses, Oliver, I like it. Groovy. Okay. Right, that's it for now. I'll see you round and about, and if not before, I'll see you next Friday here on the Design Ninja channel. Take care now. See you later. Bye.